I'm on the wrong side of everything. I became repelled by murder, mayhem, and blowing up bombs to get your way politically. And I don't like being pushed into a position where I have to be very defensive of January 6th and I have to be critical of Antifa. I don't like any of it. One of the things that the Western world has to rediscover is self-interest. The liberal mentality is uncomfortable with self-interest. It's their fault because the issue in Europe right now is immigration. That's it. And people are furious.
Let's say that you slowly replaced the people of Ireland, not just Northern Ireland. You kept the institutions the same, but the host population, the native population, decreased in direct proportion to the people you've imported over there. You think that the society would look the same?
I think that should give us courage, exposure to other people's perspectives.
It's moving us in a good direction.
You're in big trouble. What got you in all this trouble? What trouble are you in?
I'm on the wrong side of everything. And maybe in some ways I'm in the wrong profession. I'm primarily a novelist. Sometimes I forget. And if I'm in the right profession, it's at the wrong time. Because publishing has consolidated ideologically, and it's all on the left. This is not news to anybody.
Right.
And therefore, I enjoy the distinction of being one of the only, I would have to categorize myself at this point as right-of-center American novelists writing today.
What do you mean at this point? Like, have your views changed?
My views haven't changed in the slightest, but everyone else's has. So they've moved over here.
They've moved
and
to the
I've
left.
stayed here. And this has happened to lots of people.
Like the Colin Wright diagram.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know, the fulcrum point has just moved over here. I'm not going to be intimidated just because I'm afraid of the label. So, I mean, some people would call me far right. And that's just one more insult that doesn't work anymore.
Okay, so if you're center right now and your beliefs haven't changed, what would you have been 20 or 25 years ago?
Well, I grew up as a liberal Democrat.
As did I.
Right.
My parents.
I became less liberal when I moved to Northern Ireland. I lived in Belfast for 12 years and would have been perceived as having arrived at a conservative position. I don't think it actually was a conservative position. I came to detest the IRA, and I became repelled by murder, mayhem, and blowing up bombs to get your way politically.
And that made you a conservative?
Yeah, apparently.
So it's very
because at that time, American Democrats were very supportive of republicanism, and that meant supporting the IRA. And there was a lot of money coming in from the United States directly to Sinn Féin and the IRA.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I remember I lived in Portland, and at the start of the riots, they were destroying cars, property, buildings, assaulting people. I said these people who riot should be arrested. And everybody was like Nazi, far-right guy. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, wow, how did that happen? If my father, who's a staunch blue-collar Democrat, like just staunch Democrat, liberal, very liberal, if you had said to him, hey, there are going to be a bunch of people rioting, causing mayhem in the streets, you don't know, maybe it's a good thing, maybe not, what should be done with them in the United States? He was, well, you arrest them. There'd be no question about it. You arrest people who riot. But another layer of obfuscation within that is that they didn't call them rioters, they called them protesters.
Right.
And using the word riot, even though it matched perfectly the definition, if you use the word riot, you're on the right.
Yes. And of course, the same thing happened in reverse with January 6th.
Correct.
Right.
So.
And I wouldn't support either one of those. And I don't like being pushed into a position where I have to be very defensive of January 6th and I have to be critical of Antifa. I don't like any of it. And so, I mean, essentially what happened to me politically is that I broke a kind of umbilical with the Democratic Party. And I think a lot of classical liberals have had to do that. But I didn't really join the Republican Party. Technically, I'm still registered as a Democrat, but in spirit, I'm an independent. And I found becoming less factional was a release. And it meant that I could make up my mind on individual issues as I cared to. And also, the other influence of Northern Ireland on my alliances was, I only realized this after the fact, but nationalists in Northern Ireland basically invented identity politics, especially all that, all that.
Explain that to me. What do you mean?
Hypersensitivity, the ease of taking offense, this whole offense culture. It's like, oh, you've hurt my feelings. This is a political outrage. The touchiness about language, the manipulation through language, and also the excessive identification with a group, Catholics, and not in a religious sense, but in a political one. And there was no theology at work in Northern Ireland. The theology was the politics, and that
so
presaged what happened in the United States, and therefore to the entire Western world. So I was kind of ahead of the game. I found that kind of factionalism destructive and mindless. I found the touchiness tiresome. I found the manipulation of language and interference even with my ability to write about the conflict, because you had an imposition of a vocabulary. Does this all sound very familiar? So I was primed to detest woke way before woke was coined. And I think that did have a big effect on me even after I left Belfast and moved to London.
Hey, did you know only half of you watching are subscribed? If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button to keep the videos coming. Thanks.
So just real quick, are you Irish? Like, what caused you to go there in the first? You just interested?
I fell in love with the wrong man.
Okay. Okay.
I had to
I'd say
make lemonade out of lemons.
But didn't happen to me. So, okay. So, and he was Irish, and so that's why you went to Ireland?
Yeah, and I actually, the relationship had fallen apart. I didn't go there to be with my dumb love. It was over, but he was a great character.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I wanted to set a book that used him as the protagonist in the right place. And of course, as soon as I got there, I discovered that moving to Northern Ireland to write a novel set in the Troubles was the tritest thing ever done in that place. As a type, I was trite and something of a running local joke. So I beat that rap by staying longer than anybody else did.
Oh, interesting.
So I was there for a dozen years.
Wow, it's a long time. You mentioned about issues that are important to you. Like, what issues are important to you? What are you thinking about now?
Well, of course, at that time, I was thinking a lot about terrorism, way before other people were thinking about terrorism.
Yeah.
It was pre-9/11, pre all kinds of stuff. But I've always been very interested in demography, and you can't be interested in demography without being interested in immigration.
Yeah.
And I was naturally interested and increasingly interested in immigration because I became an immigrant. It was a kind of long, slow slide into becoming a permanent expat, but I spent a total of 36 years in the UK, and I just went through a re-immigration to Portugal, and that was a paperwork nightmare. So I'm someone who has jumped through all the hoops and paid all the fees. You rack up a lot of money immigrating the right way. And
immigrating the right way.
Yeah, going by the rules is extremely tiresome. And
should have just gone over on a boat, would have been no problem.
Oh yeah, I should have got a dinghy.
Yeah, you'd been fine. You'd been good to go. So something I've been thinking about, let's say that it doesn't have to be Northern Ireland, but someplace small, not like the US, someplace that's contained. Let's say that you slowly replace the people of Ireland, not just Northern Ireland, with, say, the people of, I don't know, Brazil or Indonesia, or any other country. You kept the institutions the same, but the host population, the native population, decreased in direct proportion to the people you've imported over there. You think that the society would look the same?
Oh, of course not. And we all know the answer to that question. You can't remove all the Italians from Italy and replace them with Chinese people and still have Italy. You still have land mass. You can call it whatever you want, but it's not Italy as we understand it. I'm interested in the fact that I think Americans, first of all, are naive about their own country.
Yeah. What do you mean? What do you mean?
The nation of immigrants nonsense, so that we can take in as many people as care to come in as short a time as they care to come, and we can infinitely absorb total strangers with no connection to the country. I think it's foolish. I think it's ultimately destabilizing. One of the secrets to our original national coherence for decades was the fact that we did not really have anybody immigrating to the U.S. between 1924 and 1965. There was basically a moratorium. I would argue for another one, actually.
In the U.S. or
In the
Western
U.S.
Europe?
And Europe. I mean, Europe has to stop importing so many people of very different kind because it is destroying European culture as we know it. And what's been interesting is to watch the way the rhetoric around immigration in Europe has completely changed, and they now talk about themselves the way Americans talk about themselves. So
What do you mean?
you don't have to have been born in Germany and enjoy Wurst and sauerkraut or even speak German to be German, right? It is now, okay, you have arrived 10 minutes earlier, you're in Germany, and that's good enough. You're German. And it is a
Identity.
it is not a sensible, rational, or intuitive concept of nationality. I think we all know it's a lie. It's funny because when I talk to liberal Americans, they have strong feelings about American immigration, and we should be able to, assimilate anybody. They're very uncomfortable with restrictionist policies in the United States. But they don't like what's happening in Europe because they visit Europe, right? They don't want to go to
Western Europe. I just want to clarify.
Western Europe.
Okay.
They go to Western Europe. They go to Rome. And quite frankly, it's full of sub-Saharan Africans.
Right.
They don't like it. They're not going to say so. But it's like, what happened? This is our tourist paradise, and it doesn't resemble what I bought a ticket for. And that's happening in Paris. If you go to Paris, and you know what it's like, you take a taxi to and from Gare du Nord, that whole part of the city is mostly African. It doesn't look like France. And American tourists don't like that. They want to preserve, in many cases, their own roots, and they don't conceive of France or Italy or Germany or Britain as just land masses that can be inhabited by anyone who, with any culture and any customs, because that's not what makes a nation, and it's not what makes a people. And you dilute a people enough, it's lost. They are lost. And little by little, I was about to say little by little, it's not been little by little, it's been big by big, if you will. Europe is losing its sense of self. These individual countries are losing their sense of self. And the populace, the native populace, is furious. And there's no mysteries to why all these populous countries
furious enough to vote in people who want to make change.
Oh no, they are. They are. That's what I was about to say. I mean, that's what everyone in the mainstream parties in Europe are getting all upset about, because they have these so-called populist parties that are becoming more popular than the mainstream parties. And
the Reform in
they'll
Britain.
do anything to keep them out of government. But they're not going to be able to do it forever. And it's their fault, because the issue in Europe right now is immigration. That's it. And People are furious. And they have been making their views known at the ballot box and in polls for decades. They've been completely ignored. And things are starting to get a little dangerous.
Dangerous in terms of what, like civil war, or just uprising?
I'm not big on advertising the likelihood of civil war. Yeah. You'd have to define it way down for me to be fearful about that. But certainly, I think we're seeing the, especially I know in Britain, we're seeing the increase of parties that are allied to a religion, specifically Islam. And that's the kind of sectarianism that I've seen the results of in Northern Ireland. You don't want it. There's also, it's obviously great capacity for civil, what we call civil unrest, and civil unrest is always something of a euphemism.
Yeah.
Right.
So, excuse me for asking you
an
incredibly dumb question, but I'm going to ask you this question because the reason, I just want to preface the reason I'm asking you this question is, while it's obvious to you and me, it may not be obvious to other people. Why don't we want sectarianism in a society?
Well, first off, there's this happens to a degree anyway, but you are going to be voting for what's best for your clan, right? And not for what's best for the country. And in Britain, it's worse than that. If there's a Muslim party, and there have been MPs elected on this platform, the people voting for them are not voting on the basis of what is happening in Britain, but what's happening in Gaza, which is absurd. And in fact, Britain has no influence on what happens to Gaza. So why would the electorate elect MPs on the basis of what's happening in Gaza and to show support for Gaza when even the Prime Minister has no influence on the Middle East? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And that's one of the, there was another instance of Pakistani politicians were pressing for building an airport in Kashmir. They can't even build a third runway in Heathrow.
Yeah.
So never mind Kashmir. It's, when you are importing populations, you also import what they care about. And they care about back home. It takes a long time to care about where they are. And they're very different kinds of immigrants intentionally, but I think Europe is especially dealing with people who don't want to change, don't want to adapt, don't want to become concerned with the nation that they have arrived in as it is, but want to change it and make it like where they came from.
So is a hard truth from this that just shows the endemic flaws of the democratic system, and maybe, to phrase it in terms of leftism or identitarianism, a problem with whiteness, or an they would say an advantage of whiteness. But I would take
it back to a problem with democracy.
Okay.
There's certainly a clash between democracy and a permissive immigration policy.
Okay.
Because there's all this resistance to the use of the word invasion. I would say that once you reach a certain number, it's a perfectly appropriate word to use. One of the reasons that it is, if you're dealing with real mass migration, large numbers of people from somewhere else are not just an imposition on your territory and resources, but they also constitute political takeover.
Okay.
Because if they are naturalized, and if you have birthright citizenship, they vote. That means that democracy has a hole in it and can be taken anywhere. The population that's been immigrating to Europe is very illiberal.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Very counter to all the principles that the EU holds dear.
Correct.
All that liberty and tolerance. No.
Accepting of homosexuals, for example.
Oh, and oppression of women.
Right.
Oh, these principles are at diametric odds with the way Europe likes to see itself and the values that it espouses. And that's setting up enormous political conflict and potentially, at scale, You don't have those old values anymore. You don't have the tolerance anymore. You've got sections of your country that are, basically governed by Sharia law. There's a huge conflict between the very tolerance and openness that permits huge amounts of immigration and that immigration. That the whole picture doesn't compute.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I think is often lost in these conversations, and you tell me what you think about it. So nobody wants to talk about what I consider to be a fact, and Eric Kaufman has done fantastic work on this. He's a academician in the UK.
I know him.
Oh, okay. Eric's awesome.
Yeah, he's great.
He's fantastic.
And he does really data-based research.
Yes, correct.
Right? And he's a calm, moderate
a chill dude.
Yeah. He's much better at that than I am.
Yeah, he's great. So I think what's lost in this conversation, and you tell me what you think of this, is that not all immigration is the same.
Exactly.
What group of immigrants, when they immigrate to a country, have like incredibly low crime rates? Reed knows the answer to this. Contribute to the treasury disproportionately, even more than the native people. You know what group that is?
If we're talking about Europe, it's Americans.
Americans are, there's one group, yes, I think Americans are the second. You know what the top group is? You could probably guess it if you thought through it. And they're not Europeans.
Indians?
No, Japanese.
Japanese. Oh,
Japanese.
Of course.
Yep. So you get it, right?
I don't think they immigrate very much, though.
No, but the incarceration rates are just shockingly low. I mean, even the accusations, that's how they measure accusations against people incarcerated when they go matriculate through the judicial system. People have no problem talking about that. Remember, my mentor told me once, he said, I went to class and I said, I can't believe how stupid everybody is. And someone said, Frank, you shouldn't say that. He said, well, can I say how smart everybody is? And they said, sure. So what people don't talk about is the other side of that. Mm-hmm. So it's my buddy Reed over there. Every time I look through this data and I see the data, I always send Reed the data and I say something like, what do you see? Incarceration rates, taking away from the treasury, whatever metrics that you want to see, there's one group that is consistently in the top 3 for offenders. Now, I told you the other thing is they don't usually break them up by religion, but Sikhs do extraordinarily well on those charts.
Yes, you want Sikhs.
You do want Sikhs, and you want Japanese people. Okay, so pause.
But Afghanis, Somalis are the worst. The Somalis are the worst.
And Eritreans.
And Eritreans.
Yeah. So, and those countries are next to each other. So it's fascinating to me when we have these conversations. If it were racist, you couldn't say Sikhs and Japanese because they're not, as a general rule, I mean, you don't convert into a race.
Oh, Peter, you're going to get called racist anyway.
Yeah.
If you say we shouldn't let people from these countries in.
I think Sikhs and Japanese are great.
Right?
It's just what it's
data-driven. It's actually easy to do an analysis of who you want in your country and who you don't. And the trouble is that it does break down to a degree along religious lines. Getting that through the U.S. would be murder. I mean, Trump has tried through executive order with his so-called Muslim ban.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone went nuts. It's because it doesn't look good. It is discrimination. It's worth remembering that discrimination used to be a positive thing.
Yeah, positive, neutral.
Right?
Now it's negative.
And so you can easily put together the statistics. There are multiple studies now as to what the long-term effects on average of different nationalities are. And especially since you've got governments claiming that, we need these high rates of immigration to prop up the labor market because, we need the taxes.
Tony Blair says that.
Because of all the old people and the usual. But if you look at who is really getting in and they're not propping up the country. They are not the answer to the pension system.
Yeah, they take more from the system than they give to the system. It's something like, over
can be 500, 600,000 euros over a lifetime.
Right.
In fact, They did research on, most of the research, by the way, is private because governments don't want the answers to these questions.
That's why they hide the statistics of people who are
totally
incarcerated.
buried.
Right.
But if a low-skilled migrant arrives from certain countries in the UK and lives to like 92, it's £1 million.
Yeah, so that's the other thing we haven't talked about on this axis, these various axes are skilled immigration versus unskilled immigration. Reed and I were just in Australia, New Zealand.
Well, it's one reason that it's almost, it's not a fair question to ask people whether they support immigration.
I think that's right. But
I support immigration of a certain kind.
I completely agree. But the problem is that that's such a nuanced, to answer that question in a certain way. Again, 40% of the people think that the sun revolves around the earth. So how are you going to have a conversation that's more nuanced about something like immigration? I don't even know. I can't remember. Reed, pull up what percentage of Americans don't know the country north of them? What country is north of them or south of them? So if you don't know what country is north of you as an American, it's not clear to me how you can make a discerning judgment about immigration.
Or why you should be able to vote.
Yeah, that's another question. But you just don't have enough information to know you don't even know what you don't know, which is the problem. So what's the statistic in that? 40% of Americans cannot locate Canada. Okay, so let's talk about that real quick.
That's like not being able to find your own ass.
Yeah, if let's say that's true, that's Grok expert. Reed tells me that 40% of Americans cannot locate Canada on a globe. How on earth are these people going to have an informed opinion about that? They don't even know what a Sikh is.
Mm-hmm.
They could, if they can't find Canada on the map, what percentage do you think can find Japan on a map? Or know the difference between Sunni and Shia Islam? So, I mean, that's the thing that's so frustrating about this, is that you're trying to have a nuanced conversation. So, like, you're right. What are your feelings about immigration? And you start talking about this any substantive way. Maybe you say, which I believe is that you need an immigration policy that's data-based. And we need to encourage people to come in who are going to have a salubrious effect on the society. And we're going to not let in people in, I don't know, it seems to put the whole conversation in hard mode.
Well, it's on the ignorance front, you just can't do anything about that, and that's going to pertain to just about every issue. It's partly because our education system,
I agree,
sucks.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting worse.
But they feel good about themselves because we've really promoted self-esteem.
If we're talking about the U.S., there's definitely a major political problem. With the 60% of people who at least know where Canada is. I'll talk to them. And there's a major political problem with the kind of immigration restrictionism you're talking about,
right,
which I would support. But it's just going to seem on the face of it racist. And you'd need
right,
to...
But, yeah, okay. But it's not racist because we're letting in Sikhs.
It's economically rational. And
yeah, I would say more than economically rational. The criminogenic factors. I mean, you could just go through the whole list.
Oh, one of the truisms that people who are permissive on immigration always like to throw around is the fact that immigrants commit less crime than the natives. Those studies are few, old, and rigged. Because the real criminal problem is with illegal immigration, and they're throwing all the legal immigrants.
That's what I was going to say.
And with the pool, and it reduces the percentages fantastically.
Yeah.
Actually, if you look at the statistics, I'm not going to be able to rattle them off the top of my head, but in a state like Texas or New Jersey, the chances that an illegal immigrant is going to be incarcerated or arrested are like 4 or 5 times the native population
you mean for
rate.
crime, not relating to their legality of being in the country?
No, not counting being an illegal immigrant is a crime.
Yeah.
No. Aside from that, much more likely to be criminal, much more. And that's been suppressed It's been distorted. And so, it also has to do with criminality. And, I don't know what has happened to all those people that Biden let in. Where did they go?
Well, how could you know?
Right?
Because you can't, because they're illegal. By definition, you don't know because they don't.
But if it's at least 10 million people, and it may well be
We don't know the
more
numbers.
than that.
Okay, so here's another frustration that I have. I'm frustrated that people cannot differentiate between legal and illegal immigration.
Yes.
It seems like such a basic, but they're again clumping and obfuscating these ideas and terms, and I just don't know what to do about that. Like, I don't know. It's very similar to me. It reminds me of the idea that people don't understand. I don't know. I get so frustrated. Help me out. Help me out.
What's interesting about what's going on in the UK is, as you probably know, the big problem is legal immigration. They do have this regular problem with the small boats coming from France. France is really delighted to get rid of them.
Sure.
And the numbers are really starting to rack up into significant amounts of immigration, but it's still 10 to 1 legal migration per year that is out of control.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of reasons for that. The legislation on immigration is too loose.
Yeah.
I also think that the Home Office that controls immigration and goes through all these asylum claims and issues visas is, if all the photographs I see of their officers are any at all representative, heavily taken over by Muslim employees.
Yes.
So they're letting in their kin.
So that's a really interesting question. I've thought about that. I really wish we could have more rational, sane conversations. I noted a few years ago, I think social media, especially in the deranged moral orthodoxy that took over the society, it put a price on wondering. Like, you just couldn't wonder about something out loud. Like, if you had a sincere question about something, so many people thought that there was a right answer, and they were completely convinced about the right answer. And you were kind of an existential threat or a bad person if you even wondered about it. And so, I've been struggling with that because that's questioning your faith. I mean, that's because the whole political sphere has taken on religious overtones. Right.
And we do have a kind of secular factionalism a la the Catholics versus the Protestants. And so there's not a lot of real discussion between the two sides at all on anything. And if you even question something, then you have put yourself in the out group.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Do you think this is a two sides problem? In other words, do you think neither one of the sides wants to have a conversation with the other side? Or do you think it's a one side problem?
If we're talking about the left and right, I think it's primarily a left-wing problem.
I think it's almost exclusively a left-wing problem.
Yes.
And there's a kind of weirdness about like both sidesism. Like, well, both sides do it. Well, I mean, I think about Charlie Kirk being assassinated, being murdered. He went into college campuses. The only reason he went into college campuses is because there was a moral orthodoxy he wanted a challenge. But he was bringing in conversation, debate, and he was murdered for it. And everybody, not everybody on the left, but not Bernie Sanders to his credit, but large swaths of people on the left gloated and were gleeful and were dancing and were cheering about a guy who wanted to have conversation.
Yeah, but these are the same people who were cheering about October 7th. Something on the left got morally dislocated. And they don't think for themselves. It's like they just get the menu, they get the memo.
Yeah.
Or maybe the menu.
Yeah, maybe the menu.
Maybe it is the menu.
Yeah.
And this is what is dish of the day. It was just shocking to me to watch how rapidly the same crowd, the same rent-a-crowd switched from climate change to Palestine, right?
Yeah.
And tomorrow will be something else, and they'll just all move in lockstep.
All right. So let me ask you a question. So my agent has now rejected, my book agent, 5 of my last 5 book proposals.
I'm surprised.
Well, and my last book proposal was talking about this idea of the culture problem and people not talking to you, et cetera. And she said to me, we want solutions. We want fixes to the problem. Write me a fix. And I talked to Rita about this and some friends of mine. And I don't know the solution. Like, I don't know the solution. How do you get people to the table to have a conversation with you?
A meteor from outer space, maybe?
Well, yeah, or in other words, nothing. Like, if someone doesn't want to have a conversation with you, they're not going to have a conversation with you. So when my agent says to you, you know, fix this problem, like, tell us how to fix it. Fucking, I have no idea how to fix it.
Yeah.
I have no idea if because it could be unfixable. It could be that you just simply cannot get people to have a conversation with you if they don't want to have a conversation with you. It could be that. I don't know. But I don't know how to fix it at this point.
Yeah, besides which, even if you have a conversation with people, doesn't mean that you're going to change their mind or their behavior.
But maybe you can like the Habermas thing, you're going to Habermas philosophy, you communicate to understand. Like, maybe we could get people understanding, but you can't even get people understanding if they won't have a conversation with you. Here's the other thing that I've been thinking about, if I may use this, that I've been thinking about. So we have a lot of people, back to the immigration thing, in the society who have profoundly illiberal views on a whole host of subjects. The most conspicuous probably being women's issues, the way we treat homosexuals in society. It is unclear to me that liberalism is the solution once you've already let in a large number of people who hold illiberal values. In other words, it's unclear that the hammer blows of liberalism will kind of flatten out or in some way meld or mold or fix people who hold profoundly illiberal views. And even more than liberal views, want to destroy the whole society, like the fabric of the civilization. They just want to rip it apart. So I've been thinking about that, because if that's true, I'm not saying I believe it, I'm saying if it's true that liberalism can't solve these problems, then the only way it ends is in fire.
Well, the ideal solution is not to let these people into your country to begin with.
In Western Europe, at least, it's too late.
In Western Europe, well, they could at least stop it. They could stop it. And then it wouldn't get worse and worse. I mean, I think the entire Western world needs to institute a parties over, no more asylum. I think the asylum system has to be shit-canned. It was designed for a completely different era, in a period where everyone was still had a hangover after World War II, kind of a moral hangover. And so it was in that spirit of never again, these treaties. But at that time, international travel was rare and extremely expensive. There were no cell phones, there was no internet. And we now have a technology and an international economy that makes mass movement of large numbers of people pretty easy. And the West can't continue to have a welfare state, or even what the Americans call a safety net. We have a welfare state too, actually. You can't have that and let anyone in. One of the things that the Western world has to rediscover is self-interest. The liberal mentality is uncomfortable with self-interest. It wants to obey higher moral laws. You know, it's internationalist in perspective. So it's suspicious of, if not hostile to, the nation state. But we don't know how to organize the world on an international world level, and right now that would just be chaos. So
Yeah.
we need to return to a fortification of the nation state and to a revival of healthy nationalism, and there is such a thing. And that means closing the door and letting in only people who are good for your society, and not just because you feel sorry for them. The whole asylum system has been corrupted anyway. All the people virtually all the people crossing the southern border in the Biden administration were fraudulent. Actually, to claim asylum, you're supposed to be fleeing persecution. And, I'm sure that they wanted to go to a country where they thought their prospects were better, but very few of those people were fleeing persecution as it was originally conceived when asylum was established. In other words, you're trying to get away from Nazi Germany, right? And now we've loosened the meaning of persecution, and as long as you have trouble with gang violence or domestic violence, then that's fleeing persecution, which is ridiculous.
It's interesting. We're witnessing in real time the end of the neoliberal order. And I also wonder, do you think that the fabric of society, the social cohesion, is being eroded? Because I have a test for this. Can I tell you my test?
I'm interested in your test.
My test is anecdotal, but it is my test. Do people let people off of confined spaces like elevators and trains before they get on?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was unthinkable that people would go into an elevator before people got off of the elevator.
Yes.
Or go into the train.
Yes.
And I was just in New York.
That's a good test.
I think so. And I remember these guys, I'm not going to mention any particular demographics about them, but there was a crowded train in New York City. Reed and I were just in New York City. They went to get off the train and they were immediately rushing to and I literally physically took my hand and I put it on and I said, no, you wait. And usually I don't do that because
in New York, that can be dangerous.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be shot or whatever.
At my size, I wouldn't do that.
Well, I had just had enough. And he was with friends too. Fortunately, his friend said something in a language I didn't understand, and they let people off the train. But I think that's a kind of litmus test. But I see so much of the society breaking down, and I'll just throw that out to you.
Well, one of the problems, if we're just come back to our running theme, in places like New York, very high immigration, very low assimilation. Only 30-something% of New York was born in this country. It's the highest concentration of the foreign-born in the entire world.
See, I have no problem with that.
And
that I have no problem with.
Well, if they get with the program.
Exactly.
But
if
they
they're
don't.
willing to follow the rules of the country,
right.
I don't care what race you are,
But
I don't care what religion you are.
And if it's only a few people, they do get with the program because people are adaptive, right? They copy other people. But when the rules are breaking down, if you copy people, then you're copying people who are not following the rules, right? I mean, you take a look at what's happened with the quality of driving in New York is appalling.
Yeah,
People
I don't drive anymore.
Don't acknowledge, well, even as a pedestrian and a cyclist, I don't drive either, but I'm very aware. You have to be very aware of motorists and whether they're running the light.
Yeah.
And there's just widespread, total indifference to traffic rules. And the streets are becoming positively third world thanks to the introduction of electric bicycles, the majority of which are being driven by illegal immigrants delivering food to more affluent households. I mean, it's the way people eat in New York now, and they're everywhere, and they don't obey any traffic signs. They go the wrong way on one-way streets. They have completely taken over the bike lanes. They don't signal. It is total chaos. By the way, the same thing is starting to happen in London.
So tell me, what you think about this. So you say that, and the first thing I think is, except by fiat that that's true, the kind of person who needs to hear that will just immediately shut off or tune out. Like, I don't know what to do about that problem. I don't think they're intractable problems, but we have really fucking serious problems in this country. And, you know, I'm always struck. So we you know, I travel 365 days a year. I'm always struck by, like you mentioned the streets. I think the streets are kind of commons. You know, how people treat the commons, how people treat the public transportation, how they treat the subways.
Littering.
Yeah. And I'm always fascinated, and there really does seem like there are two Americas almost. It really does, and I'm radically against the notion of a national divorce. I think it's horrifically idiotic.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think
Also would not support, but I also...
Yeah. So do you think it's a problem when I think to myself, well, how is that going to be interpreted? Like, so you and I have, I think from what I've learned now, very similar ideas on immigration. Do you think it's a problem when I say to myself, oh my gosh, this is going to turn people off, the people who need to hear kind of what the data and evidence is, but if it's framed that way, in other words, like, how do we reach the people who have substantive disagreements with us, knowing that they're not going to they're just going to hear something and turn it off? Or is that even a bad question?
You're not going to reach those people. They're not going to listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
I listen to your podcast.
Oh, you do? Thank you.
Yes, I do. Because you have interesting people on with whom I often agree, or at least within my personal Overton window, if you will.
Yeah.
That's an expression that used to be really interesting and fresh, and now is tiresome.
Yeah.
But if you were instead doing podcasts all the time about people who wanted open borders, I wouldn't listen to it. I mean, this isn't just a problem with the left. It is a problem with the way things are set up now.
Interesting.
Maybe I would force myself, in order to listen to a podcast of somebody who wants open borders, to hone my skills, but that would be a discipline. It would not be an inclination.
But you would listen...
merely in order to figure out how to refute these arguments. It would not be receptive to those arguments.
But you...
Because I'm as, you know, maybe you're more open than I am, but I have very strong views about a number of things, and I have to admit that my mind is kind of closed. And so I'm not receptive to the other side. I'm not receptive to trans ideology. I'm not. And so I am not going to listen to a bunch of interviews with people who have pretended to change sex and are incredibly happy as a consequence. I'm much more interested in listening to detransitioners who have had ghoulish and grotesque experience with genital reconstructive surgery gone wrong. I mean, that's going to appeal to me, and I can't change that. I mean, I could force myself because I want to be open-minded, even if I'm not, and I could make myself sit there and listen to it, but it wouldn't affect how I actually felt about these issues, because I'm not receptive to it. So I think maybe the best way to understand it is to think about it in terms of yourself. And I think, you know, on particular issues especially, I'd be part of the problem. I'd be one of the people who doesn't in any meaningful way want to talk to the other side, because it wouldn't change my mind.
I'm going to call you out on that. I don't think that's true.
You don't?
No, I think you would totally talk. I think if somebody came in here from WPATH and we put them on stage, I think you would sit on stage and listen.
I am certainly polite. It's one of the reasons I'm do so badly on something like Piers Morgan, because I won't intrude myself, and I'm not a bully. And I'm perfectly happy to talk to people.
Yeah. But you would listen
And
if
I
we
wouldn't
had
be
someone,
rude to people, and I wouldn't insult them.
So if we had someone from WPATH on stage
Yeah.
who wanted to defend it, I bet you'd be in the audience and listen. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I would listen.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is I wouldn't change my mind.
I'm going to call you,
You
out
don't
on that
think so?
again. Well, I'm going to call you out on that.
All right.
What if you had, I don't think Helen Joyce
I mean,
is
by
here.
the way, I'm criticizing myself. This is not a boast.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, I understand it's self-criticism, but I don't know if that's true. Like, what if we had really smart people who know this issue, like legit done their homework? Helen Joyce, Mia Hughes, Colin Wright, whoever, and they had, 2 or 3 trans people, and they clearly got demolished. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm saying
No, it definitely wouldn't.
it wouldn't happen. We know that wouldn't happen, but you'd probably hold your beliefs less tenaciously. You'd probably recalibrate your confidence down, no?
I would try to take the edge off my rhetoric if in the conversation,
Yeah.
not looking for a fight. I might try to find some common agreement.
Yeah.
Because when that purely oppositional discourse doesn't accomplish anything.
I agree. That's why I think debates.
It's
I'm
also
not into
unpleasant.
the whole debate thing.
Yeah, I don't think it works.
Conversations are far superior.
And in fact, when podcasts or events are put together in a classical debate format, I've noticed that they hardly ever change the audience's mind. When they do that before and after polling, and there's usually very little shift.
Yeah. So two questions. First one, would you like to ask me any questions? And second one, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? So would you like to ask me anything at all?
Yeah, what were the other book proposals?
One was a fiction book about Socrates, who lived in a mythical land. It was for teenagers, young teens, who roamed the countryside in ancient Greece, talking to people who had different views and fomenting a revolt against the gods. Mm-hmm. That was rejected. The other one was a book proposal with my friend Brett Hall, from the Australian science educator from Australia. It was about memetics and how we should think about things in terms of memes. That was rejected. The other proposal...
Maybe we already do.
Maybe we already do. Yeah, maybe we already do. One of the proposals was about this idea of what went wrong in our conversations, how to fix those conversations, but less in terms of... So we already have the tools for how to have awesome conversations, but the assumption is people want to have conversations.
So you're really focused on how to communicate better.
That's part of it, how to epistemology, how to clean up the way you think about things. We're focused on helping people think through issues that are, to use a word I used before, intractable, or they think they can't think about. I hate to call it empowerment, but to kind of empower people, to give them better tools, easy to use tools to navigate reality. Like, that's what Reed and I are about. Street epistemology, helping people do this stuff. But I don't necessarily think that stuff is going to be... I just don't think it has a broad appeal. Because the only reason you'd use the tool is if you think you wanted the tool. Like Socrates said, a person doesn't want what he thinks he lacks. So if you don't think you lack something, you don't want it. So many of these folks, particularly the identitarians, they don't think that they think they have the right answers to all moral questions. So what do they need the tools for? I mean, that's the problem that I keep coming back to. It's not to quote the Martin Gross book, it's a conspiracy of ignorance. But we have to quote another book, The Conspiracy of Dunces. We have a bunch of dunces, whether it's, don't know where Canada is on the map. So if somebody doesn't know something, I mean, it's such a problem.
Well, I can see you're struggling.
I am struggling because I want to give people the tools. I think the tools are easy to use. I think the tools are accessible. I think the tools are incredibly useful to help people
When you
live.
say tools, do you mean this game you play between
just how to have a better conversation,
agree and disagree?
Yeah, let's read epistemology, but just even how to have a better conversation with somebody. How to just how to listen. Just basic stuff, man. Basic stuff.
The trouble is that what you're talking about is implicitly moderate and non-factional, and there's not a big audience for any of that.
Correct.
Maybe there should be, but nobody wants to buy that book.
I know. That's what my agent keeps telling me.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah. I try never to push conclusions, although I have my own set of beliefs, which I just talked about here, that I feel fairly strongly agree with those. But I do wonder about the road ahead. I do worry about our country. I do worry about the West. I do worry about the preservation of Enlightenment values. I'm concerned that the pendulum is now going to swing the other way, and we're going to see a lot of racial hatred and division, and we're going to see a lot of and I already see some of it against the backlash against gay people. I'm fearful that I'm just concerned that there's going to be an overcorrection, and I'm deeply concerned about the lack of civility. So that's. Oh, and by the way, one more thing. I'd be fine with all of this stuff. I think we could effortlessly get through all this stuff if we weren't printing money like crazy.
Oh, well.
If we didn't have these insane debts and nobody gives a shit about it.
Oh, well, that was the subject of my 2016 book, The Mandibles. And it is actually in my little list of fears. Actually, no, it's not a little list.
Yeah.
Festive fears, because I get books
It's a critically acclaimed book.
It is a prescient book. And I wish it weren't. Because it's about the collapse of the dollar.
Yeah.
And it looks at one family that starts out with a fair bit of money at the oldest generation, and what happens to them. So that's top of my list.
Yeah.
Is
really?
fiscal collapse.
Wow, we agree on that then
brought
as well.
on by sovereign debt.
Wow, we agree on that. That's
absolutely.
You're one of the few people I've talked to who also has that as a top degree.
That is way more dangerous than climate change, and I admit it's more dangerous than uncontrolled immigration.
Wow, we are okay. Can I tell you what my second concern is? If you share this concern, oh my goodness, I'm concerned that we will not have an ability to meet our energy demands, particularly when we have large data centers going online. I'm deeply concerned
also, the U.S.
about our energy grid.
The U.S. electrical grid is held together with paper clips.
Reed, where has this woman been all my life?
Saying the same things, but somewhere else.
Wow. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Only one tiny thing.
Yeah, please.
When is your next book out?
Oh, when is your next book out?
Thank you. It comes out in February. It will not surprise anyone who's listened to this podcast that it addresses American immigration.
Oh, fantastic.
And that subject.
American immigration.
Especially because it's set in New York during the migrant crisis of 2023, 2024, during the Biden administration.
Oh, great. I can't wait to read that. Excellent.
And I will send you a copy, and we can get together again and continue our conversation.
I would be honored, truly honored. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
I've loved talking to you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.